Hello and welcome. My name is Elissa Baldwin and I am with the Patient Education team at the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We are here live at the Global Adolescent and Young Adult Cancer Congress in Long Beach, California. I am here with Jim Brewer, the Vice President of the Dare to Dream Project for LLS, and he is presenting a poster today, so we are going to hear all about it. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Alyssa. Glad to be here.
So tell me all about the Dare to Dream Project. What is it?
The Dare to Dream Project is our initiative that is truly transforming treatment and care for kids with blood cancer. We're taking a holistic approach to trying to make sure that we have new, better, less toxic treatments for kids with blood cancer, and that we're providing support to them and their families as they're on their journey with their disease. And this really involves all of the pillars of the LLS mission, from our patient education and support services, which are truly best in class, and everything we do for our pediatric and AYA patients and their families, to the research that we have increased our research commitment, which is research on all of the different blood cancers that affect pediatric and AYA patients, policy, and advocacy, so working on legislation, on regulation that affects the development of new drugs and affects access to care for these patients. And then we kind of have our extra little fun project that is the PEDAL Global Master Clinical Trial, which is our own master clinical trial that is doing a lot of amazing things in the world of pediatric oncology drug development. So it's a pretty comprehensive approach to, again, as we say, transforming treatment and care for kids with blood cancer.
That's wonderful. Now, what does PEDAL stand for?
So PEDAL stands for Pediatric Acute Leukemia.
Okay.
So it's a very, very, very fun name. And it is truly about developing more targeted, less toxic therapies for children. 80% of childhood cancer patients develop some sort of a long-term health condition that they have to deal with throughout the rest of their lives. We're so grateful and fortunate that through research and the investments that LLS has made over the past several decades, that more of these kids are surviving, but now it's how do we make sure that they're thriving? And so a lot of it comes down to having less toxic treatments that are not chemotherapy based and are more targeted therapies. And that PEDAL Master Clinical Trial is working towards starting to develop some of those.
That's really exciting. And so that is really the reason we're looking for less toxic treatments. And that's why, because we already have pediatric treatments for leukemias right now. And the ALL, acute lymphoblastic leukemias, are very successful right now. But we have been seeing that they are toxic for children.
And so, yes, for ALL, the picture from a survivorship standpoint, yes. And again, it's through all of the advancements that have been made over several decades. But there's another type of pediatric leukemia, AML, where it's still a really tough disease to treat. And again, these treatments for both of these are still very toxic. And we're still, not having enough of those AML kids surviving, number one. But then again, still the same issues with the long-term side effects as well. So the PEDAL Global Master Clinical Trial is primarily focused on AML because that is, again, that's where the need is. But we're also starting to see opportunities for certain more aggressive subtypes of ALL and broadening that focus a little bit as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the subtypes. I mean, when we're looking at pediatric leukemias, we're also looking at different subtypes, different gene mutations, right, than we see in adults.
Yeah, and it's kids are different. They're not miniature adults, and their cancers, the biology of them, the biology of their bodies is very different. And some of the targets that we are able to identify are very different in adults than they are in kids. And so it's really trying to develop new treatments and new approaches that are very specific to those pediatric cancers and the unique tumor biology that we see with pediatrics and really in each individual person. That's what targeted therapies are all about.
Yes.
And that is a lot of what we were working through with Dare to Dream is that, again, kids are kids. They're not just little adults. And so we need to differentiate our approach in how we best care for them and how we develop these treatments.
Now, you've mentioned several times now that this is a master clinical trial. And for some of our viewers, they might notice that term is similar because we had a Beat AML
Right.
master clinical trial. Could you explain what a master clinical trial is?
So basically, we are going to be testing a lot of different types of treatments all at once. And so it's multiple arms of the clinical trial. So it's not just one new therapy or combination of therapies. We're going to have several different arms.
Yes.
And so that's really, I think, the biggest distinction in that we are, we're not just taking, one shot at the target. We're trying to provide a bunch of different avenues that could be successful and could hopefully produce, again, these new treatments that can be beneficial to the pediatric patients.
Yes. And one thing that is very unique about this trial is that it's worldwide.
Yeah.
And so we are getting clinical sites and physicians, scientists from all over the world in many different countries. Why is that needed and so important?
Well, so thankfully, pediatric acute leukemia is a relatively rare disease. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
Yes.
The fewer the patients, the better. That also provides some challenges when you talk about developing new treatments. Mm-hmm. And to get through the clinical trial phase for the regulatory approval so that you can actually provide these treatments mm-hmm. to these patients. Because it's a small patient population, you need pretty much all of them to participate.
Yes.
And you need a critical mass of patients to be able to, again, get through the regulatory process. And so the global nature of this allows us to bring in as many patients as we possibly can. And it also helps us in developing approaches that can benefit patients in these other areas of the world mm-hmm. that maybe don't have access to the same treatments that you do in the US or vice versa. Because if there's something that works in the US, it's going to work in the Netherlands. It's going
yes.
to work in, Japan. Mm-hmm. And again, vice versa. So it's making sure that we are really treating this as a global approach and trying to bring as many patients into these trials as we possibly can. And this also goes to the, part of the PEDAL master trial is our screening trial, where we're collecting data and we're providing genetic screening for all of these patients. And that data that we're collecting, that we're trying to, again, collect from all over the world, we are harmonizing that in a way that's never been done before and creating a pediatric AML data commons that will help us. Because of the level of detail we're getting on this, it'll help us hopefully identify potential new targets.
Yes.
It'll also help those patients who are getting that sequencing to see if there's something that helps to inform a clinical trial that might be available and applicable to them, but also so that they can have a better understanding of what that disease is. And then that data will be available to scientists, moving forward to, again, be able to develop these new treatments. And that's a really important part of this trial as well.
Mm-hmm. So for our listeners who don't know, what is the difference between a screening trial and a standard clinical trial where we would see medications?
Well, the screening trial, as I was describing, it really is about screening, the genetic screening that we want to do for these patients, and then providing that information to them and their doctors, so that if there is something that's available that can help them, then they at least know that's available. Plus, collecting that data again for future use. Yes. When you normally think of a clinical trial, you're thinking of a new therapy, a new agent or a combination that you're then comparing against what's the standard of care. That's when you're really talking about you're kind of testing a drug. Mm-hmm. And so that's really the difference between the two. And while there's, we have this screening trial, which is again so important, and then we're going to have these, multiple therapeutic subtrials that are really testing specific agents or combinations against whatever that current standard of care is to develop, hopefully the data and what's necessarily to get approvals so that then those therapies can be available to patients.
Okay, so that's really then the next step. So we're in a screening trial right now, and the next step is scientists, doctors, researchers developing those targeted treatments to try on patients.
Yeah, we have our first subtrial open now, which
that's
is great.
so exciting.
And it's been open for a little while, and so we are literally testing a new combination of therapies against whatever that standard of care is. So we're starting to already move in that direction, and we have one that's open now. We hope to, ideally have at least one or two more open by the end of the calendar year 2023, and then maybe one more that will follow soon after that.
That is so exciting. And I think a lot of people really see just how little funding goes into pediatric cancer and have very real concerns, especially when you look at AML, pediatric AML, that has just a low survival rate for childhood cancer. And so it's so exciting that we can really do something about this and make this difference. And so thank you so much, Jim, for talking to us today. And I'm so glad that you were able to share this presentation with healthcare professionals from around the globe, especially since we have worldwide participation here from Australia, from the UK, Japan, all these other countries. So it's so exciting. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Very happy to be here. And I think to your point about the investment in this is a $175 million commitment on the part of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society through June of 27 to make all of this happen. So we're absolutely working hard to make it happen. And it's been very, very fun to be able to share this with everybody here, as you mentioned.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. And be sure to visit the link below for more information about Dare to Dream. And you can stay up with the progress of the PEDAL trial and the whole Dare to Dream project. So thank you again for joining us today.